All right, Josh Smith here. I'm at my studio, live from Flat 5. Today, my guest is one of my favorite musicians in the world. And whenever anybody asks me, like, oh, who's your favorite improviser? It's always this guy. I've been listening to
Thanks,
him
man.
my entire life, literally my entire life. The first time I saw you was as a kid in Florida. I don't remember where, either Musicians Exchange or Alligator Alley or something like that, and just was floored. And the fact that I can even call you up and that we're pals and we've played together here and there blows my mind. You've seen him over the years. He's been in incredible bands, toured as a sideman with the biggest names in jazz, had an incredible band called Tribal Tech, and now has an unbelievable solo career. His new record, People Mover, is incredible. And he's just one of my most favorite musicians in the world, Scott Henderson.
Thank you, Josh. Wow. I didn't know I was that good. Thanks.
Oh man,
Thanks, man.
dude, obviously you've been a huge inspiration to me most of my life, and for the people who don't know your work, I want to go back to how it started. I've been asking everybody, kind of, you know, my parents weren't musicians, so it was just kind of luck and happenstance that they bought me a guitar when I was 3 years old, and life would have been different if that didn't happen. What was your story? Were your parents musicians?
Uh,
How did the guitar end up in your hands?
well, my dad had an acoustic guitar lying around the house all the time, and he did play a little bit, but not professionally. But he knew how to play some tunes, and he was actually pretty good. He played pretty clean. He had an acoustic guitar, and he'd play these country tunes and sing. And I was like, oh, that's really, I dug it. And then, but I think the turning point was when these guys came. We were lucky to be able to afford a pool in in our backyard. My dad was so happy when he was able to build a pool in the backyard. And
Yeah.
the pool guys came over, and they were always listening to the radio, and I heard Led Zeppelin. I mean, that's how old I am. They were playing Led Zeppelin on the radio, even Whole Lot of Love with the whole middle section and everything. So
Yeah.
I heard a Whole Lot of Love, and that was it for me. I said, okay, that's what I want to do. And
Wow.
that was the connection between my dad's guitar and the love of music, that got me really into it.
That's okay. So that's amazing. So also, what city is this you're growing up in
West
with the
Palm
pool?
Beach.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So I'm from Fort Lauderdale, so we're not from very
Hmm.
far apart.
Hmm.
And you needed a pool down there. It was
Yeah, yeah,
imperative.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
okay. So you've got your dad's acoustic guitar, and then Zeppelin turns you out. How do you start learning? Like, what's the next move? Do you find a teacher? Are you on your own? What's the next
I
move?
was on my own, and what I started doing immediately is start transcribing solos. And of course, I didn't know how to write music on paper, so I just started listening to solos and learning them off the record. Like I learned the solo for Whole Lot of Love. I learned some Hendrix things. I learned licks from anybody, and we kind of had a community of neighborhood guitarists. And anytime somebody would learn a new lick, they would show it to me and I would show it to them, and everybody was showing licks to each other. Usually the players were either Jeff Beck, Richie Blackmore, Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix. Those were the big four guys that everybody
Oh,
was
wow.
was studying and stealing licks from. And somebody would call me on the phone, I got a new Blackmore lick, I got to show it to you.
Well, man, that's amazing how like communal that, and what's amazing is how sustained the boom was, because you're what, maybe one generation after the original the Beatle boom, right? Like
I
you
guess
weren't
so, yeah.
watching it on Ed
Yeah,
Sullivan, so it's like you
yeah,
didn't rush out and buy the guitar after Ed Sullivan. You're the next, the next generation down.
yeah.
So it's like it was so sustained that it was, even then everybody on your street had guitars and you were
Yeah,
trading knowledge. That's unreal.
yeah. And it was a different world than the Beatles. It was more rock than pop. But I was
Yeah.
still aware of the Beatles and loved it from the first time I saw it. But my interest, the Beatles wasn't so much a guitar interest as much as Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin, and that was all about the guitar, so we were into that.
Absolutely. All right. So what age are you then when you're learning with your friends in the
Yeah, I
neighborhood?
guess, somewhere around 12,
Yeah.
12, 13 years old, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. And so when do you get your first electric guitar, or a good
I
electric guitar?
guess like right. I mean, even before that happened, I wanted a guitar, and it was for some reason my dad got this really good deal on this. I don't even know the name of the brand, but it was some off brand of electric guitar. and I played that for a year before I finally got an SG. And then I
Oh.
started playing Les Pauls. And when I started actually becoming a professional musician and playing in nightclubs, you know, I was raised kind of religious. So I was raised in the Baptist church, and my first gig was for the choir. But then these guys got me a gig at the Candy Bar Strip Club in West Palm Beach, and there were like topless chicks, and I thought that was a lot more fun than playing in the choir, so I did that. And
And
it
how old were
was
you
kind of a
then at
known
the
brainer.
topless gig?
Like I was 17, I wasn't allowed in the club, but
Oh yeah.
somehow they got me in. And it was kind of a no-brainer to take that gig over the church choir gig because it was a lot more fun. And we were playing Stones tunes, like mostly
Oh,
Rolling Stones tunes.
I can't
So,
imagine. I mean, I could relate a little bit to the feeling of, you know, being a kid and in a club that I shouldn't have been in playing. But man, that feeling of, you know, I'm 17, I'm playing in a titty bar, playing Rolling Stones, and you probably got money put in your pocket at the end of the
yeah,
night.
it was
There's,
amazing, you know. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, that's
amazing
got to be the.
feeling. And one really, you know, validating part of the thing is that my parents really never took my music seriously until I started bringing home money. And then they
Uh,
said, so there's actually hope. There's actually, you know, you can actually make money doing what he likes to do. So I
mm,
started, and then when I was able to finally move out of my house, and even though I had roommates, I could sustain myself and make a living playing music. That was a big deal to my folks. You know, they didn't think that
mm,
could be done, you know, but I managed to work 7 nights a week in the clubs playing top 40 or whatever I was, rock and roll or
right.
whatever I was playing. We had a band called the South Side Boogie Band. We played a lot of Jay Giles.
Mm,
You know, anything that would make girls like dance and get up on the tables and take their shirts off. That's the kind of
right.
music that we played. So, you know,
Yeah.
it was just total party, 10-cent beer night. um it was about
Yeah,
that.
but man, the overlooked part of that, what you just said, was the 7 nights a week. How much do you think all of those gigs are directly responsible for how fast you progressed and for
Oh
how much
shoot.
stamina and vocabulary you develop, you know?
Yeah, it's you know, when you're in a band and you're constantly having to learn tunes by other people who play all different styles of music, because we weren't just playing rock and roll. We had to play some top 40. I always had to listen to the tunes and write the charts for the band, and you know, like sort of arrange it and stuff like that. And it's invaluable because you learn, your ear develops, you learn how to hear harmony, you learn how to transcribe. And even though my charts probably weren't technically very correct, as far as the way I wrote them, you know, I could write the chords down and tell everybody,
Mm,
hey, it's this chord, it's that chord. And also trying to learn solos, a lot of times I took pride in learning solos note for note,
mm,
because like sometimes some of those Steely Dan songs that we were playing, the
yeah.
solo, you can't play Kid Charlemagne and not play Larry Carlton's solo because
No,
it's a
no,
part of the
that's
song, you know.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I learned songs by Night by Steely Dan, and I would play the guitar solo exactly off the record because
Right.
it wasn't the song without that solo, or Peg wasn't the song without
Yeah.
Jay Graydon's solo.
Yeah.
So by transcribing a lot of solos, I think I learned a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing because now all these guys come up and they have so much information available to them, so they grow like knowledge based much faster. But they skip out on that 6 nights a week gigs where you're forced to, maybe you're the lone soloist in the band and you're playing for 4 fucking hours. And I mean, that's where all that the vocab and stamina comes from to do that, you
It
know?
is.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, man, I played more notes and more solos in the top 40 bands than I do in my band right now. Like
Yeah, that's yeah.
we would get up there and we would start playing Cocaine, and
Mhm.
people would get on the dance floor, and we would literally play Cocaine for an hour, and I would solo for like a half an hour of that.
Yeah.
And people are too drunk to care. So
Right.
I probably did more practicing on the bandstand playing those kind of gigs. My solos were way longer than the solos that I play now in my band.
Right. And now people come specifically to hear you solo.
That's funny.
Oh man,
Uh,
that's amazing. So during those years, was there any music in your school, in high school or anything?
Not in high school, but I went to college. Actually, you know, where I got kind of a real break was that uh, I can't remember what year it was. Probably 73 or 74. I got a gig with an all black group, um, playing nothing but R&B. James Brown, Kool and the Gang, uh, um, the Spinners. A lot of it was singing groups, but a lot of it was real serious funk. Sly Stone, James Brown, and I didn't have a clue about that kind of music because I hadn't been exposed to it. But I stuck in that band for almost 4 years,
Right.
and what that showed me is that once I started getting into that music and discovering how fun it was, um, to learn that I could love two kinds of music equally, like the white rock and roll, and the black R&B, and
Yeah.
it I that really helped me because that's probably what got me out of being like a one-dimensional musician, because I probably would have just stuck with rock and roll and only played rock and roll the rest of my life. But that
Right.
got me into Tower of Power. Tower of Power
Mm.
kind of got me into Weather Report. Weather Report got me into this and that. And eventually I started listening to straight ahead jazz. And,
Yeah.
now I listen to everything because I love it all. So it was because of that experience playing with those guys that it kind of knocked me off my little safe point and
Yeah.
got me
That's
into
crazy
listening to
because
other stuff.
that is crazy because it's all about the way that you first experience something. So like those guys welcomed you in and opened up this whole new world to you, and it was like for me, like jazz was something that initially was kind of my dad listened to some and I liked it, but learning it was initially like I had no interest because the guys that tried to talk to me talked down to me in this way, like you're just playing blues, that's bullshit. Let me show you this. And they kind of looked down. And it wasn't until someone like, friendly kind of showed me, hey, you're already playing, I'm 12 years old. So whatever, take it with a grain of salt. But someone started showing me like, hey, you're already kind of doing this. Let me show you what that actually is you're playing. And in a nice way, like explained it to me. And then it was like, oh, wait a minute, it's okay. And it was the same when I heard Robin Ford. It was like at first I didn't get it because I was a blues historian and he didn't bend the strings enough for me. But then it became clear it was like, wait a minute, he respects blues equally as much as I do or more. He knows his history. It's okay to play all this stuff you're hearing.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
lose the rest of you. Yeah.
Yeah. I had the
Yeah.
same thing happen to me. I was playing stuff from getting it off the records, but I had no idea what I was playing. So after I left that band, I decided to go to college. And I couldn't afford to go to college like and get a degree, but I just took some music classes in college. And I
Sure.
learned that's when I learned, I sort of put the theory thing in the guitar together and go, oh, so this stuff that I'm playing, that's this scale or that's that scale. And,
Right.
later after that, I moved to California and went to GIT, and there were instructors there like Diorio and Pat Martino and
Yeah.
all these, great guitar players that really kind of it was more fretboard oriented. So they could actually show me, okay, well, this scale, this is how you finger this scale. And then it all started to come together. The 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 realization that all that music and all that stuff that I'd be playing exists on the same instrument, so you have to sort of look at it and with such an amount of plurality,
Yeah.
that one thing works here, works a different way in another style of music. So I feel
Yeah.
like I've been really lucky because I get to play all these styles of music that I love the blues, I love funk, I love rock and roll, I love jazz, and I get to play whatever I want. I don't have some producer standing over
Yeah.
me and going, "Hey, there's a jazz tune on your rock album. You can't do that."
True enough. I mean, but I mean that's part of what's had you arrive at like your voice, your sound on the instrument, what makes you sound like you. It's that mix of all those experiences and all those influences.
Mhm.
I'm curious, you said so Tower of Power led to Weather Report and then you got into straight ahead jazz. What was the first straight ahead thing that just kind of really turned you out and you loved it?
I probably heard one of them was Miles Davis on Nefertiti, the band
Okay.
with Wayne Shorter and Herbie
Yeah.
Hancock. I really loved that band because, to be honest, I never came from the bebop world of
Mhm.
Charlie Parker. I kind of missed that. And not that I don't appreciate it, but it wasn't the thing that got me into jazz. Like a lot of guys come from that, 40s bebop thing, I kind of, I know it's an important part of jazz, but it wasn't the part of jazz that really appealed to me. I got into more, to me, that music sounds like music that dogs listen to at Disneyland. That's what it sounds like to me. Like it's too Dixieland for me,
I hear
right?
what you're saying.
So,
Yeah.
so even though I really appreciate how great Bird is, I mean, Bird was amazing, but the style doesn't appeal to me as much as like Wayne Shorter in the Miles Davis group, because that music had a lot more space and it was mysterious sounding. It wasn't so, it wasn't that. It was something a lot more progressive and spatial and mysterious and cool, So I really dug Miles Davis. He was a big, big influence on me. His bands that he put together after the bebop era. And then of course, like Wayne Shorter's solo albums, I really loved those. And Cannonball Adderley, because he's so steeped in the blues. And that's when I started listening to Joe. Joe Zawinul was playing Fender Rhodes behind Cannonball Adderley. And that music was jazz, but at the same time, it was R&B. It was funky, and that appealed to me a lot. So I see that the correlation between Tower of Power and Cannonball Adderley is almost the same music, except maybe they took longer solos in Cannonball Adderley, big, long saxophone solos. But it's the same kind of vibe. And that really appealed to me a lot.
Well, and a lot of that's got to be because you came at it from a rock guy first, so I can understand getting hooked more immediately by later Miles. You know what I mean? Because it makes more sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it was hard for me to go back and listen to some of the bebop stuff because it sounded to me like old people music. Right. It sounded like music that they listened to in the 40s and danced to, so in a way it was the top 40 of their generation.
See, and it's weird for me coming from listening to BB and Albert King and T-Bone Walker. When I first heard Charlie Parker, it was more like, oh, it's an extension of blues a little bit more, and I could relate more to that than I could to when I first heard Giant Steps or when I first heard more modal jazz or whatever, more 70s stuff. So I was the opposite. Like my progression was the opposite way. Yeah.
You know what? I was also a big fan of the prog rock band, so that's why Miles Davis, the weirdness and the mysteriousness of that music and the kind of oblique chord changes where it wasn't 2-5-1s all the time. It was like, okay, any chord can go in any chord. So it was way more like Debussy and Ravel and Stravinsky and that kind of stuff. And that directly relates to one of my favorite bands, Gentle Giant, because I was a huge Gentle Giant fan. And that music, I've always been a big composition fan, like it's not just the soloing that gets me, it's the tunes. So when I listened to Gentle Giant and heard all that amazing writing, and then I hear the same kind of, not necessarily the same style, but the same kind of harmonic weirdness from Miles, and realize that it doesn't have to be a 2-5 to be jazz. It can be whatever it is. It can be crazy, and now like one of my favorite albums is Atlantis, Wayne Shorter, that beautiful writing, and that's probably what's inspired me the most, is writing like that, where harmonically it can go anywhere. I really enjoy that kind of stuff.
Wow. All right. So you go to some college classes, you go to GIT. When does all of a sudden you start getting these gigs going out on the road with the heroes? When does that start happening?
I guess because I met Jeff Berlin. He was one of the teachers at MI, and I used to jam with him all the time. And Joe Pass, actually, me and Joe Pass and Jeff Berlin used to play standards together every day at school. In fact,
I don't think people realize now that go to MI how jazz GIT was back then.
Oh yeah, it was a jazz school. I mean, that's why people went there. So you imagine all these legends teaching there. It was incredible and of course, you know, Joe Pass, he was a grizzly guy. He was like really mean, and he would tell you like what you're doing wrong. And I think he actually enjoyed telling you in the meanest way possible what you're doing wrong. But, but yeah, he'd say, "Why the fuck you play that?"
Yeah.
And
Holy
but
cow.
you know, it was fun. And I remember a funny thing that he said about me when he was interviewed for the LA Times. They asked him, like, "Are there any up and coming guitar players that you like?" And he says, "Well, there's this guy, Scott Henderson, that's pretty good. You know, he plays that kind of music where you don't know what the hell the melody is." And I was
Oh
like,
my God.
"Thanks, Joe." It's such a
I would have that quote on the front of my press kit for the
yeah,
rest of my life.
I know,
Joe
it's
Pass
great.
says, "I play music that doesn't. You don't
Yeah.
know what the melody."
Yeah, it's Joe was amazing. And I used to teach his son. I used to go over to his house and teach his son because his son wanted to learn fusion, you know,
Uh-huh.
and Joe didn't want to teach him that. And I remember a couple of times I'd go over there and Joe would be there in his bathrobe watching TV, and I'd say, "Hey, I'm done with the lesson, Joe. You want to play?" And he just look at me and go, "I've been playing for 60 years. I want to watch TV."
Unreal. Unreal.
He was a funny cat, man.
So
Hilarious.
when you got there, Jeff Berlin was already teaching there?
Yeah, he was teaching there, and he had a band, and he hired me for his band, and that's when I did the very first record I ever played on was Champion, this record that Jeff Berlin did.
Right.
And Jean-Luc Ponty heard me play on that record, and through Jeff I met Alan Holdsworth,
Mhm.
and Alan Holdsworth was playing with Jean-Luc, and he recommended me for the gig when he quit. So I didn't even have to audition for Jean-Luc Ponty. Jean just hired me on Alan's word,
Yeah.
and I played in that band, and from there I went to play with Chick Corea, which was a huge mistake, but you know, whatever. It was, you know, live and learn.
Right.
I remember I I told Jean-Luc Ponty that I was going to leave his band, and I got an opportunity to play with Chick Corea, and Jean-Luc Ponty looked really surprised, and he looked at me and he just said, "You?" And I thought that meant that he didn't think I was good enough musically. So I kind of took it as an insult. And he looked at me directly, and he knew that that's what I thought. And he said, "No, no, 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 you don't understand. I'm not talking about music." And I go, "Well, then what the hell are you talking about?" And he said, "You'll find out." So I didn't last too long in that band. But then
Right.
after that, I got the offer to play with Zawinul, and that was a lot more fun. I did that gig for about 4 years. That was a blast.
Had you met Zawinul ever up until before that point?
Yeah, once. And
Okay.
one time he came, the first time he came to hear me, but he didn't come to hear me. He came to hear Jeff Berlin as a possible replacement when Jaco left.
Right.
But I was playing with Joe's band. And I mean, with Jeff's band, and Joe heard me, and I guess he liked my playing because later he hired me. He remembered that night when he was after Weather Report broke up, and he said, "Yeah, there was this kid playing with Jeff. Maybe I'll call him." And I went over to his house and played, and we had a fun time. And told me he was putting this band together called Zawinul Syndicate, and
Yeah.
you know, and I was in that band for a while.
Did you ever see Zawinul in South Florida, like back in the Jaco days? I know
I
he was
did.
around a lot.
I did. I saw him play one time, but it wasn't with Weather Report. But I did hear Jaco. There was a really cool club, you know, the Musicians Exchange.
Yeah, that's
And
that was literally it's responsible for me, that place.
yeah. So I went down there to hear Othello's band with
Yeah.
Randy
Othello Molyneux,
Bernson.
for people who
Yeah.
don't know, yeah.
Yeah, great pan player. And I heard him, and it was Ray, I forget the name of the bass player, great bass player on bass. I mean, he was a kind of a protege of Jaco. Randy Bernson on guitar.
Yeah.
Good musicians, really good musicians. And Jaco would come in and sit in with them sometimes. And that's when he could really play, like when he was, before he got all messed up. Unfortunately, by the time I met Jaco in California, he was already gone. Like he was already, so I never got to play with him or really know the real Jaco. By the time I got an opportunity to play with him or meet him on a professional level, you know, like as one of his peers. Man, he was gone, way gone by
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
Yeah.
Man, there was an amazing scene down there at the time of
Yeah.
musicians. And actually, did you see Ira Sullivan passed away yesterday?
He did? Oh
Yeah,
my God. That's so sad, man. He was a legend. I mean, I used to
yeah.
go hear him play with Joe DiOrio.
Yep.
And one of the cool things about the
At the
gigs is,
airport. Used to see him at the airport.
wow, I used to go see him at the Unitarian Church. There was a church, and it would be Steve Bagby on drums and Joe DiOrio on guitar and Ira Sullivan on sax, trumpet, and all the other many instruments that he
Yep.
played. And the cool thing is there wasn't a bass player, so Joe was just the harmony, and Joe just supplied the bass notes and the chords. And amazing to hear those guys, especially being young. And I have to say, I didn't really understand jazz as much as I would have liked to and heard them. I think I would have gotten more out of the concert if I knew more about the music back then. But just to see him, it was really inspiring. It was incredible.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
sad
that
about
was
Ira, man. What a talent, man. That guy played everything.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny growing up down there. He was one of those I remember seeing him as a kid. I remember Randy Bernson, clearly seeing Randy Bernson as a kid. Othello, seeing him at the Musicians Exchange. I never saw Jaco. I was too young for that. But what was crazy was every musician I met that I started gigging with, all these adults, everyone had their Jaco story. You know what I mean?
Oh
Of the
yeah,
night
I've
he
got a
came in
few
and wrecked their
myself.
gig, or yeah,
Yeah, I've got a bunch of those, man. I mean,
yeah,
I remember one night with Chick Corea, we were playing at the Pier in New York, and we were playing one of the softer tunes, and we heard all this noise in back of us, but we didn't know what it was. Turns out after the show, we found out that Jaco had tried to climb on the stage. And he didn't have I guess he was just going to walk over to Patitucci and grab his bass out of his hand and start wanking on it, you know?
right.
And then after the show, he was passed out under the food table. And what was so
Yeah.
weird is like his black feet were sticking out from under the table, and all the New York guys were just stepping over his feet to get their food. And all the guys from LA were going, "Oh my God, call the ambulance. Jaco's under the table." And the New York guys were just not, it was nothing to them. They were just stepping over him. Like it was just like
Wow,
an everyday occurrence to them. It was,
that's
and that's the
crazy.
night that Willis met Jaco for the first time.
Really?
And talk about weird. Like, because
Wow, that's
Willis was
crazy.
playing in Wayne Shorter's band, who was opening for us. And
Wow.
so Willis met like one of his big heroes for the first time. And of course, Jaco was like, it's like Willis meeting a homeless guy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was so weird to see Willis sitting on the couch with Jaco, and Jaco being that like a street urchin.
Yeah.
And this is like Willis's hero. It was weird, man. Surreal.
Oh man, that's crazy.
But I did get to see that Word of Mouth big band a couple
Oh
times.
really?
And they were killing. I mean, they were so great. I got to hear them at Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in
Was
LA.
Brecker on the gig?
Yes, everybody. No, Mincer was on the gig,
Okay.
and
Okay.
everybody was. It was just one of those great gigs where Jaco played his ass off, and that's the last time I ever heard him really sound like Jaco. Because by the time I heard him next time, which was a few years later, he had kind of gone.
I got to give you a tape I've got that I got from like the Musicians Exchange closet when I was a kid, but it's Jaco and Buddy Miles at the Musicians Exchange playing them changes for 60 minutes.
That's been great.
Yeah.
Because Jaco had enough vocabulary, he could probably play them changes for 60 minutes and not run out of shit to play.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough, and then it's great, and then it's rough, and then it's great. It's
Right.
you know, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
so you tour with all those legends, and you've kind of now you've found like your foothold. When do you start, composing, and when does your tunes start to become the focus, and when do you start the band?
I've been composing since Florida, so I had a
Right,
bunch of
right.
tunes, and in about around let's see, it was around 82 or 83 when I was out in LA playing with, I was either playing with Chick or Joe at the time. I think I was playing with Chick. I met Willis, And I met, but it wasn't Willis actually at first. It was Roscoe Beck. You know Roscoe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Roscoe Beck, Will Boulware, um, um, uh, it was Mike Baker on drums. We started playing at Dante's. Remember Dante's?
Yeah.
It was a cool club in North Hollywood, now a parking lot, Pontiac dealership. But we started playing there and playing original music, and that's what turned into Tribal Tech eventually. And we did our first album, and then eventually Tribal Tech became more known as being me and Willis and Covington and Kinsey. And we did most of our records in that lineup. And we did about at least 4 or 5 records before we could start touring, because, you know, kind of have to build up a following and stuff. Finally, we got an offer to go to Europe and do some gigs. And that's when I had to leave Joe's band, because I couldn't do both. I couldn't tour with both bands. So I didn't really want to leave Joe's band. I was having a good time, but it was sort of like, I have to do that, or I have to either start being a band leader, or this is never going to happen. So we started touring as Tribal Tech, and eventually, as the years went by, we started getting a following, and we started touring, and that's how it all started happening.
How old were you when the first Tribal Tech record came out?
I'm not good with that kind of stuff. It was 85. So, and I'm 66. So you guys will have to do the math, because I'm no good at math.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Fair enough. Oh man. Well, I mean, was that like exciting? Was it scary to kind of leave the comforts of like probably a decent paying gigs and things like that and start doing your own thing full time?
It was definitely a financial step down. I can tell you that.
Right.
You know, band leaders are always broke. So at least at first. And so, you know, we were paying the guys, and if we made anything, great. If we didn't, we did it because it was our band and stuff. But eventually, you know, the Europe and when you get out of the United States, the money gets better. So the Europe gigs started paying pretty well. South America, Asia was paying pretty well. So we were able to, you know, to do it. And of course, there really is nothing like playing your own music for people and having just the realization that these people actually listen to your record and they're coming to hear you play those songs. That's so gratifying. And it's so, I mean, I even describe the level of thankfulness to people who actually, you know, buy your stuff. You put out a record and they actually spend their money on it, and then they come to hear you play that music because they like it. That's the most gratifying thing in the whole world. So I'm just lucky to be able to do that. And I'm not saying that I didn't put in the work to be able to do it, but it's still, man, it's luck. It's just being at the right place at the right time and things coming into place, and just, you know, rolling that ball up the hill forever and just trying to gain momentum. Takes a long time, man. That's
the fact that a large enough group of people have any interest in what I do or you do or whatever, that it's like sustains your life is fucking unbelievable, really. I mean, it's unreal.
It is. Yeah. It really is, because those guys that I've always looked up to that do that, it's like I'm thinking, wow, I'm doing what my heroes did. I've always been a real big fan. I mean, you know, we argue this about sometimes on the podcast, because Bruce talks a lot about the great players. And I'm sort of like, yeah, but, you know, like, there's only about 20 million great players out there. They're all great. Who isn't great that we rave about? I'm more of like, I'm more like blown away by the writers, by the guys like Pat Metheny, John Scofield, John McLaughlin, the people that, and bands like Zeppelin and Gentle Giant, who have this amazing catalog of original music. That's what just blows me away. Like, how can this guy be Wayne Shorter's, Joe Zawinul, Jaco? How can these guys be such great players and great composers too? That's what's always just floored me. So that's who I always wanted to be, like a guy that wrote tunes and went out and played his tunes, because a lot of people, they don't come just to hear you play. They come to hear the songs that they like. And that's a thing too. That's a whole other thing. It's amazing. Like
Yeah,
the reason people went to hear the Beatles because they loved those songs.
absolutely.
They weren't there to hear extended solos. They were there because they
Yeah,
loved that music. They loved the songs. And I'm a
yeah,
songs guy. But I'm a jazz musician, yeah, but I'm not a standards guy. I never really
yeah.
wanted to make a living playing Stella by Starlight
Right.
because someone else wrote that. I
Yeah,
want to make it on music that I create, and that's why this is such an amazing experience, because I realize that people are not just coming to the gigs to hear me play, but they want to hear these songs that they like, and
yeah.
that's amazing to me. That's like
That
really gratifying.
absolutely. All right. Let's get into the 10 questions.
Okay. Okay, I'm scared.
No, no, no. They're not hard. Number one, man. When you started first learning things, was there something that when you figured it out and got it under your fingers, it was like so you were proud of yourself so much that it set the hook, and you were there was like that was the moment. There's no turning back. Like I
Yeah.
remember learning BB King Intro to a Slow Blues and thinking it'll never get any better than this. I'm good. You know.
Yeah, that was Whole Lot of Love for me.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
was the Whole Lot of Love solo. I got my guitar. Uh,
Yeah.
so that was it for me. You know, like when I learned that, I was like, wow, I'm a professional guitar player. Like I can sound like that. Like to put yourself in the shoes of somebody that can do that like on their own. I
Yeah.
was saying, well, if I can do it, so that means that someday I'll be able to make that kind of shit up.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was the second question, which was what's the first solo you ever learned note for note? Was that the first one?
Yeah, that was the first one. That was
Yeah,
a big deal for me.
that's amazing, man, and you'll never forget it. You could be 90 years old and you'll be able
Yeah.
to sing that solo note for note or play it. Yeah,
Yeah, and I learned then after that it was Richie Blackmore. Yeah, it was that. You know,
yeah,
so I've learned so many, if not the whole solo, my favorite parts of
yeah,
everybody's solo from Charlie Parker to Jimmy Page. And
yeah.
that's what gives you the, you know, the inspiration and vocabulary, I guess, that goes on for the rest of your life.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. All right, number three. What's the first thing you play when you pick up a guitar? Do your hands just go somewhere automatically? Is there just a thing that you can't even help it, like an automatic response?
Well, there's always just playing just playing blues,
Yeah,
you know, and getting vibrato. But lately I've been working on stuff like I'll just take I don't know, geez, I wouldn't even know where to start, just to take a simple progression and see, maybe I'll go there, maybe I'll go there, here, maybe here. I'm just hearing things, maybe here. Maybe I'll go here, but change that to minor. Maybe here, go here. Change that to that key. That might be, that might go here. I don't know. I'm just messing around with chords.
when
So
you're doing that, I'm curious. You look at the fretboard, and I wonder how much is visual and how much is just being led by your ear and your brain.
it's both, because
Yeah,
I'm hearing things, but sometimes I'm not sure if I'm going to put my fingers in the right place. So I look at the neck, you know,
yeah,
a lot of times when I play, I'm conscious not to look at the neck because I don't want to be led around by my eyes. I want to be led around by my ears.
right,
So,
right.
so I get into especially when I'm playing with other people, because I'm one of those guys who really likes my playing to be conversational with the band. So if I
Hmm.
look at the guitar, sometimes it's tempting to play what I know rather than to play what I hear.
Ah,
And
interesting.
a lot of times, I think John McLaughlin said this really well one time. Sometimes you have to forget who you are and what you are and let the music come through you. So you want to forget about all the stuff that you've learned and all the stuff that you've practiced, and because your goal isn't to play that at the gig, only if it comes out in a completely organic way. But there's no reason to play 10 notes if all you're hearing is one. So
Well, yeah.
so sometimes if I look at my guitar, I'm tempted to go into the area of my brain that I was in when I was at home practicing. So if I don't look at the guitar, I'm paying more attention to what's going on around me musically, and I'm paying more attention to what fits in that moment. And I sort of like look at it like a quarterback, like you practice and you go to all those practices, but when you're in that moment and you've got this guy coming at you from this angle and another guy coming at from that angle, you got to make a decision where to throw the ball. That's the moment that it's a moment that's completely original and unique, and you've got to be in that moment, not in the headspace you were when you were at practice. You got to live for that moment.
As an improviser, that's literally what we exist for and live for. And it's been taken away from us right now.
Stupid virus.
Yeah. I like the quarterback analogy because that's 100% right. I had a lesson the other day with a kid, and he was asking me what it's always, what are you thinking about then when you're soloing right there? And it's literally, I'm not thinking about anything, I told him. It's like when you learn to drive and then you actually know how to drive, you're not thinking about, I better get my signal on right now and I've got a right turn coming up ahead. No, you're just fucking driving, It's like.
Right. I always equate it to language. It's like you're speaking, you're telling a story. You're not thinking about nouns and pronouns and adjectives and the technical aspects of speech. You're just telling your story. And that's why we learn all this stuff, so that we can forget about it when we play. And it switches over from the left brain to the right brain, and you're just flying. It's the force, you know what I mean? Like you let the force take over, and that's absolutely what it is. Yeah.
All right. Number 4. Do you have anything that like lives inside your brain as a narrative musically? So for me, unfortunately, it's a swinging, kind of Charlie Parker-ish, nonstop single note melody that goes 24 hours a day. I hear, it's always in B flat, and I can't. Sometimes I can't go to bed without wrapping it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does anything that just like runs like that for you all the time?
Yeah. I have to say, it's because I listen to it so much, man. I'm such a big Tower of Power freak. Yeah. It's somewhere. I live somewhere in between Tower of Power and Led Zeppelin. I don't know how the hell that works, but I'm always hearing Soul Vaccination. I'm always hearing that, but I'm also hearing Led Zeppelin. I'm always hearing like Heartbreaker. It's like always with me all the time.
You can have worse things just constantly running through.
Or there's few Gentle Giant tunes that are always rambling around in my head all the time that I'm always thinking about. That are just there.
Man, is Soul Vaccination your favorite T.O.P. song?
I love that. I love What Is Hip. I love so much of their music and what they did. It was just so cool. Dave Garibaldi, man. I love the kind of drumming where I don't even consider when the drummer plays 2 and 4 on the snare. That's not funk to me. That's not funk. I like the more syncopated style of funk. Like to me, the funkiest tune ever is In Time by Sly Stone. Yeah. And when I listen to that tune, it just blows me away how funky it is and how angular the drums are. He's not playing 2 and 4 on the snare drum. Far from it. He's all over the place, Yeah,
it's like listening to Cold Sweat. When the change happened to Cold Sweat, it was like, oh, wait a minute, something special. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, that's cool. T.O.P. all the time. Nice. Man, that ballad As Surely As I Stand Here? I was learning that the other day. And beautiful. I never learned that song. Unbelievable song. Yeah.
I learned 3 Views of a Secret a couple weeks ago. and I learned to
Unreal.
play it as a solo guitar piece. And I'm having so much fun playing that tune. There's so much harmony in that tune that's not written in the chart,
Right.
because they probably have to write a 10-page chart to get all that harmony in there. But there's variations of the harmony that's written in the chart. And I love those variations, are amazing.
Yeah. Unreal band. All right. Number 5. When did you feel like, on that process, you started to find your voice on the instrument? Was there a moment when, like, you fell into something, or maybe someone even pointed out to you, like, dude, that thing you're doing is really cool, and I never heard that? But was there a moment that clicked and you thought, I should go further down this path because I'm starting to sound like me?
I don't know how to answer that, because I'm not aware of a time that it happened. And because I have so many influences in my playing, that I think there was probably a time where I was sounding too much like a number of guys, because I
Yeah.
was really influenced by Scofield. So for a while, he was probably actually the first jazz guitar player that I
Mm.
really, really liked a lot, because he was playing with kind of a rock tone.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
I remember in fact, I saw him in Miami. I saw the Billy Cobham George Duke band,
Oh, wow.
and I saw him in Miami, and I was really impressed with Scofield, because he was playing these lines, but with a kind of cool. It was a Les Paul Jr. he was playing,
Mm.
so I got really involved in him, maybe too much, and I had to just stop listening to him, because I thought, I'm starting to sound too much like this guy. Or Richie Blackmore. I was sounding so much like Richie Blackmore. As a kid, people thought I was, a clone of Richie Blackmore, and Jeff Beck too. And Albert King, I listened to so much that every time I play blues, I can't help but play what I'm hearing that he plays.
Yeah.
So there's so many influences there that I don't know if I do have my own voice.
Oh, you definitely do.
I don't know, but if it ever happened, I don't know how it happened, because I've listened to so many guys that
Well,
that have influenced me
was
so
there a
heavily.
moment like when you started doing your own gigs and your own tunes when at least that got shut off and you weren't thinking about any of those things when you were playing?
I have a feeling that without my knowledge, probably writing had a lot to do with it, because when you're a pro musician, you always play for the tune.
Yeah.
So if I wrote a tune that needed this, I played for that. And maybe that's what got me away from thinking I had to be this guy or that guy. I had to be the guy for this tune, and I wrote it. So
Yeah.
I must be the guy that has to play it. And maybe that had something to do with finding who I was. Maybe it came through the music rather than just from guitar playing.
Oh, because dude, you have an incredibly personal voice. I mean, I can tell in 2 notes, that's Scott Henderson.
Well, thanks. That's a big
Always, without
compliment,
question.
man. It's a huge
Absolutely.
compliment.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think everybody can. I mean, and
Well,
obviously that's yeah.
you can hear influences in everybody's playing. When I hear Jeff Beck, I hear Les Paul,
Oh
because Les
yeah.
Paul was a huge influence on Jeff Beck. And I'm not saying anything bad, because I love Jeff Beck, but he's not as original as people think he is. If you haven't heard Les Paul,
Yeah.
when I walked into a music store in Florida one time and heard a Les Paul album for the first time in my life, I thought Jeff Beck had a new album out. And I was like, what's this Jeff Beck record that just came out? And it was Les
Yeah.
Paul. And I was going, holy shit. So, you can take Tommy Emmanuel and cite Chet Atkins.
Oh yeah, and
You can
Lenny
take Mike.
Breau and all
Yeah,
yeah, all those
sure.
guys.
And you
Yeah.
can take Michael Brecker and hear all the Coltrane that
Mhm.
he transcribed. And then people always build their own vocabularies on top of what they've learned from other people. And that's what gives them
Absolutely.
their voice, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So yeah, your voice was kind of spurred along by your composition and the need to find, you know,
I
your role in
guess,
your own
yeah.
tunes, I guess,
I
probably.
guess
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah. All right. This is a interesting one. What's your biggest weakness on the guitar? Mine
Oh,
is
I already know that.
acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
Being pretty. Like I struggle in those scenarios. What's yours?
Well, that's what I'm working on actually in this time of the pandemic, because and we were talking about this a little before, is that everything that I've done on the guitar since I was young has always been based on what's going on around me. It's like, I want to learn this lick because I want to learn it before he does, and so I can show it to him.
Yeah.
And it's a competition, or
Yeah.
I need to practice these tunes because I've got a gig coming up. So, or I need to sit around and write, because if I don't write, I won't have a record. So instead of practicing, instead of the countless hours that it takes to write an album, I'm not practicing. So everything is so career oriented that what I've missed is those guys like Ted Green, who have the complete opposite approach. They don't want a career. They don't
Right.
care about being famous. They just want to sit around at their house and become amazing guitar players. And
Yeah.
chordally, they want to be able to experiment with chords and stuff. And that was my weakness, and that is my weakness. And that's why this whole time, ever since March, I've been sitting around at home just working with chords and studying voicings and trying to be more of a solo guitarist, even though I don't plan on, it's like I'm not trying to polish it like I'm going to go start playing solo gigs. It's
Right. You're not
just,
working on your solo guitar album.
no. I'm not working on a solo guitar, shtick that I can
Yeah.
go out and play. I'm just working on ear training. Like, I want to be able to hear harmony and play it on the guitar without having to think so much about it. I just want it to come more naturally. So it's basically just a big ear training lesson for me.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm here, what do I hear coming next? Well, I hear this, but then I hear this coming down to here, and I hear this, right? Or maybe this. That was actually a shitty thing. Whatever. If I might hear this, but I might hear it going to this. And I might hear, and now I hear this going to this and to this. And I heard that. Like, no, it's like, my guitar is completely out of tune, but whatever. I want to be able to play what I hear chordally, harmonically. And I wasn't very good at that. And I can have to say, honestly, after this pandemic, I've become better at it. It's helped me to,
amazing.
to help me hear stuff, because I've practiced on it every day, and I'm hearing stuff that I never heard before. So I'm glad.
It's amazing how the career gets in the way of in life of the shedding and just working on the things you want to work on. It's funny. I interviewed Mark Goldenberg the other day, and he spent a lot of time with Ted Green, and he told a little Ted Green story about being at a Christmas party at Making Music here, Joey Brasler's old store that he ran, and that Ted was playing Christmas music for the party, and it was a room full of L.A. guitar players there attending the party. And when Ted started playing, everybody stopped talking to look at Ted and be like, holy shit, And Ted, within 40 seconds of everybody stopped talking and watching, stopped playing and said, please don't look at me. Like, I can't play if you guys are looking and listening. And he so didn't want to be playing gigs. It was like crazy. Yeah.
No, it's a thing because when you change this is a weird, boy, opens up a can of worms. But when you change your perspective from being a musician to be a performer, your whole thing changes. You become a different guy. I don't like to perform. I like to participate in music and just have people around, because when I think I'm performing, I get nervous. Then and when I get nervous, I'm not going to play well. So I don't want to think about the fact that I'm trying to do some kind of performance like a classical musician. I just want to be playing and having fun and have people enjoying listening to that. So, but if I start looking at myself as a performer, then here comes the judge, jury, and executioner hating every single thing that goes down. And I don't have the confidence to play motifically, because, if you want to play motifically, you have to like what you play.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I'm a performer and I think that I'm performing, I don't like anything I play because I feel like I'm judging it as soon as I play it. So
it's especially as a guitar player, we end this. I don't think any other instrument deals with the fandom that we deal with as a guitar player. Yeah. So it's, man, what a trap. You look out at that room full of fucking guitar players, and the first inclination is give them what they want. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
what a trap! It's such a trap.
It is because there is a certain amount of guys out there who are listening to you who are expecting chops,
Yeah.
and they're expecting to be wowed, right? And those are the guys I don't want to play for. I just want to play music, so that might be playing all whole notes for a while. It depends on what I'm hearing, and I don't want to have to play like I have to impress anybody, because then you go down a really bad road
The
where
worst.
and when you start having to when you think about comparing yourself with yourself night after night on the road, because you're not the same person you were last night. I mean, how many times have you had a great night on stage and you try to duplicate all the things you did the day before so you can have another one?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and
The
you
worst is
can't,
when you. That's
because
it. It's the trying to duplicate. If you
right,
just let it happen, you're
can't.
fine. But if you go, "Oh, I was on it last night. I'm going to do the same thing," it always goes to a
No,
disaster.
it's
Yeah,
just, yeah, it never works that way.
yeah.
So
Unreal.
I think there's a lot to be said for studying the psychology of music and making it an important study in your life, because if you're going to be a pro, then you have to learn how to approach it like a pro does. And professionals, when they go to work, they just go to work. They
Yeah,
don't, they don't try to what would be the word, would be to have unrealistic expectations of themselves.
yeah.
And that's where you get into trouble. When you start having unrealistic expectations of yourself, you get yourself into trouble because you're never satisfied.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's not good.
being unsatisfied can sometimes be a good motivator, but sometimes it's completely irrational. And we all have those
Yeah.
friends who, at the
Yeah.
end of the gig, you thought they were burning, and they say, "I sounded like shit tonight."
Well, I'm
We
usually
all,
one of those guys, but
yeah,
I'm usually the one that comes off stage going, I sound like shit, but it doesn't stop me from trying, even harder the next
yeah,
time. But the thing is, though, it doesn't really matter. If it's not who you are when you come off stage. If you come off stage thinking, oh, I sound like shit, I really need to work harder, that's fine. That can be a positive thing. But it's when you're on stage, you can't be that person.
no. If
When
you
you're
take
on
that attitude
stage,
on stage, the show's
yeah,
over before it starts.
you're screwed. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
screwed from note one. So
yeah, yeah,
there's a certain amount of swagger, man. I've seen
yeah.
you play. I mean, I know you, man. You go up on stage and you're a confident guy when you play. You
I
really
try
are.
to be. I
Well,
thank
you
you.
are, though. You are.
Yeah,
You've got a swagger, man. You're like, you go up
man.
on stage and you go, "Hey, man, I am going to play my ass off," and you do. And
Well, I
and
try, man. Like you said, so I don't have the vocabulary that you have, but I try to make connects. For me, it's weird. Since I was a kid, I wanted to mean everything I played. So it was like when I catch myself sometimes when I'm playing superfluous bullshit. It's like I just want to
Mhm.
mean it. It could be a lot of notes. It could be whatever. Excuse me, but I have this real problem with, did I mean that or didn't I mean it? And I kind of evaluate myself. That's a problem at the end of the night. Like I was jiving that whole night. Like I was in my head and trying to impress myself, or did I mean it? And that's a problem for me.
That is a problem for everybody, and that's why John McLaughlin said what he said, where you have to forget about yourself, lose the ego, and let the music just come through you,
Yeah,
because then you're not thinking about anything like impressing anybody, especially yourself.
yeah, yeah,
Because trying to
yeah.
impress yourself is just as bad as trying to impress somebody else.
I'm curious, when you're on the road and you're playing a string of dates in a row. We all have, like, there's that magic number where shit just locks in and you're like, you can do no wrong, that feeling,
Sure.
Does it ever get too far past that? Because I've noticed that lately, where once I get in that groove, there'll be a couple gigs in a row where you could do no wrong. And then that next one, it's like I know I could do no wrong, and I just play too much because I can pull it off. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the thing is, the thing that I notice about, and I never started noticing this, of course, until I started touring, because if you don't have anything to compare it to, but man, when you go on the road with the same people and they hear you play every night, and you know that they're hearing you, and you know that they're good musicians, so they know when you're having a bad night or a good night. What I've discovered is the thing about having a good night is being different. Just being different. That's all you have to do to have a good night, is just to try to play something that you didn't play the night before, just to be creative, because being creative makes up for millions of mistakes. I'd rather make mistakes all night and come away thinking that I had a really fun, creative night and had cool connections with the guys, and the band had a good night, that I had this perfect, flawless night where I executed everything perfectly. I don't give a fuck about that stuff anymore. I used to really care about it. Now I don't care about it at all. I'd rather be sloppy, and maybe I didn't execute something, but if there were some connections in the band because of rhythmic creativity or just things that happened that didn't happen
even
the
dynamics.
night before. Yeah,
dynamics
stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's stuff that like a pro musician knows, that those are the most important things, the creative moments. It's all about being creative, not about showing off. Yeah. So once you get past thinking that you have to show off, you can be creative because you're not nervous. That's the whole thing to me, being nervous or not being nervous. Yeah. Because if you're nervous, you won't be creative and you'll make mistakes. But if you're not nervous and you're just having a good time, I think one of the things that helps me on stage is getting the audience on your side so that they know that you feel like they like you and that they're having fun. Because, you ever stare out in the audience and everybody's like this? And I always go, I see you motherfuckers out there, you guitar players, just waiting for me to make a mistake. And I'll just go like, or here's a chord, it's completely out of tune. Are you happy? Okay, now I can get to playing some music. I just make jokes about it, because or telling Trump jokes. It's a great way to, just to get the audience like in a comedy fun mood, and then you feel like they're on your side, and you feel like, I can have fun now. I don't have to worry about them hating me if I make a mistake. Right. Of course, there will be guys that hate you when you make mistakes, but it doesn't matter. Those aren't the guys you want to be playing for.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. That's a healthy.
Or do you ever look out the audience and see one person that's just having the time of their life, and they're just digging everything? They're so happy to be there. That's the person you should be playing for. Because that's that. Look at them during the night, and you'll play better.
You're right. You're 100% right.
Because they're just there to have fun. When it boils down to it, we're just entertainers, man. Like we're not brain surgeons. Nobody's gonna die if we make a mistake.
No. All right. So we already talked about TOP, but is there another huge influence that people would be surprised to hear as a big influence on your playing?
Well, of course, if I said Weather Report, nobody would be surprised. So I'm going to say Beyonce, because I love Beyonce. I love her. I think she has really good writers. There's a lot of good pop music, but I count her music as being among some of the best tunes, because those writers are really good. Like, some of those songs are really good songs. And of course, she sings the shit out of them. And I love her phrasing. And she's such a good phraser. So I listen to her, and I love the timbre of her voice. I just think she's cool. So I'm a fan.
That'll surprise people, I think.
Yeah.
All right. That's a good one. All right. Would you rather have a great guitar and a shitty amp, or vice versa?
I'd rather have a shitty guitar and a great amp.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. If you got a bad amp, you're just screwed. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yep, I'm with you 100%. But it's been split with our friends, with other guitars. It's been 50-50 down the line.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, the tone, when we were talking about before, the psychology of playing, I read that book by Kenny Werner. Because I'm always interested in other people's viewpoints of how you view yourself and how you view your own playing, and how you get past that critical part that can destroy your night. And what I think is so funny is that he talks about listening to your instrument and, first of all, acknowledging that it's the most beautiful tone you've ever heard. And I go, this guy is not a fucking guitar player. It's like, nice book, dude, but you're preaching to the wrong crowd if you're trying to convert guitar players into your way of thinking. Because the
Yeah.
first thing we think is, God, this sounds like shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
And it's
Well,
like
dude,
you're
but
trying
you
to
said it.
fight.
The comfort is so important to the
Yeah.
level of gig that the audience ends up getting. You said you don't want to be nervous, but you also want to be comfortable. So it's
Right.
like when you have your sound, that means the audience is going to get better show because you're comfortable.
Yeah.
And I say this a lot of times when I get into gear fights with people, who will question. Oh God, they'll question a pedal choice on my board. Like, that pedal sucks. Why don't you use this instead? And my initial thought is, well, did you enjoy my show? Do you like my music? Oh yeah, it was fucking awesome. Well, you would have enjoyed it a lot less if I had a rat instead of that pedal, because I would have enjoyed the gig less.
Right.
So
Of
what
course.
matters really in the end?
Well, and also, it's not even that you have in your own gear, but the sound of the room changes so much from night to night, which
Yeah.
affects distortion in a particular way. Where
Yeah.
one night your sound is like horribly bright and you have to do all, and another night you can't hear the bass at all. It's just a bunch of low frequency. Like the kind of music that I play, in order to really play it well, you've got to hear each other. So
Yep.
when we play those big boomy rock rooms, we don't get to be quite as subtle. We don't hear the subtleties of each other's playing. And
Yeah.
usually we have better nights when we play rooms where the sound is really clear and we can hear each other well. So
Yeah.
that plays into that. How can you compare Monday night to Tuesday night, when Monday night we were playing in this beautiful sounding room like Ronnie Scott's in London, and the next night we're playing in a basketball court?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't compare those two nights because every night is different with a different situation. And of course, when you're renting gear, like I have my own gear when we're on the road in the van, but when we fly, I've got to rent gear. And sometimes, man, I get these trashed out Marshalls and speaker cabinets that have been used by heavy metal bands for 10 years.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've really tried to teach myself is how to get past it, how to have a really shitty tone, but still have a good night and ignore it. And sort of somehow to psychologically, psych myself into thinking that my tone is good when I know it's not.
Right.
And get past it. And I've done it a couple nights. Like I remember this one night in Italy, I probably had the worst tone I've ever had in my career. And I just couldn't believe how bad it sounded to my ears. Like I just play one note and I go, that's the worst tone I think I've ever heard. And yet somehow I pulled it off and I had a really good playing night and I was able to do it. And I'm not always able to do it, but I was pretty proud of myself that night that I had a good playing night and the band had a good night, despite the fact that my tone fucking sucked ass. It's horrible. So what are you going to do? You just try.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, you got, when it all comes down at the end, whether it's a shitty rental amp or not, the gig must go on.
Yeah. I would love for Kenny Werner to try to play a gig on a Strat with distortion and then rewrite his book.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think he's very familiar with 60 cycle hum at all.
No, I don't think he's familiar with guitar players at all. His world, and I don't think he even considers the guitar an instrument.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, so you've already said you've been working your butt off during the pandemic, and you've shown us some of what you've been working on. What is it that keeps you motivated? Because every time I hear you, you got new shit, and it's obviously that you're working on stuff, and maybe it's not as much as you think and as much as you want, but you always are. So what keeps the fire burning after all this time,
I don't know. I think it's just love of music, and love of, and wanting to improve and wanting to bring new things to the audience. Because for me, like I said, when it becomes a job like that you're going to do nightly, and you know that the guys are going to hear you every single night, you really struggle to not play the same thing the same exact way every night. And so I have to constantly try to reinvent some things that I do, or it's more about reinventing the way you think, because sometimes I have a feeling, okay, how I'm sure you do this because everybody does this, but you know how when you solo, you've got solos in a certain tune, and you come across something that's really good and you want to keep it because you want to give the audience the best thing. So you end up
Yeah,
doing these little mini compositions inside your solos that are the same every night,
of
you
course.
know,
Yeah,
and everybody does it. I do it. And I don't know when in the solo it's going to happen. Like say, if you've got a chorus and you're playing like the next loop through the changes, you might
right,
do it. But the band guys, they always know it's going to happen. They don't know when, but it's always going to
right.
happen that I'm going to go into this little composition thing in my solo. And I guess I'm always looking for new ones,
Yeah,
you know, new things that are really good that I can bring into my solos. And some nights I don't play them, some nights I do play them, but I want
yeah,
to have a big arsenal of them so that
yeah,
uh that the songs change from night to night and the guys have new stuff to react to. And sometimes I just fly by the seat of my pants and don't know what I'm going to do, and
yeah.
sometimes that ends up being the best shit. But
It is
yeah,
amazing how much playing with the same guys a lot has an influence just on your own improvisation, because yeah,
it
you
does.
want to play different things for them, they change what you play, and then that becomes a new little hook that you put in that
Yeah,
solo, but it only
exactly.
happened because you reacted to something they did, and yeah, it is it's amazing. Yeah,
That's one of the reasons that I do try to keep people in the band for long periods of time. I'm not a guy that changes up rhythm sections all the time. I like having the same guys because they know when to lock into something and they know when not to. So
yeah,
we've got enough experience playing with this that we can almost read each other's minds at times, it seems like. And
exactly.
that's a fun thing once you get on the road and once you get into it and once you get past the don't fuck up stage, because that's why I hate that's why I don't do one-offs at the baked potato very much, because when you do a one-off and you haven't played for a while and you're putting all this music together, the vibe at that first gig is always don't fuck up. That's
Always,
what it's all
always.
about. It's not
Yeah,
about being creative. It's just about don't mess the music up.
yeah,
Like I've got to really struggle to remember all these things.
yeah,
Once you get on the road for a week, you don't even think about the music anymore. You just think about being creative, and that's the fun part. So I want to
yeah,
get to the
yeah,
fun part,
yeah,
and that's the part we all live for, is when something happens that you don't expect and you
hmm
play stuff that you've never played before.
oh
And
yeah,
that can only happen under the circumstance where, number one, you're completely relaxed and you're comfortable and you feel like that you're not under any pressure to
yeah,
impress anyone or
yeah,
do anything like that. You're just doing it for the sheer fun of it. And
yeah,
those are the moments that we all live for, man.
yeah,
Those are really important. That's what keeps me motivated to do what I
yeah.
do.
Well, you're literally speaking to my number one biggest frustration in the entire world, and it's that I don't get to play with the same guys often enough. I'm flying around the world playing with pickup musicians, or when I do take guys, I'll take them for one tour and we'll get a thing, and then I'll never take them everywhere any again in that
Uh-huh.
configuration. So
Uh-huh.
normally I'm just every tour, every gig is me cueing people, thinking about what they can play. They only know the songs that I sent them before that tour, and it's not just playing. And yeah, that's you're speaking directly to my number one
That's
frustration.
that would be hard for me because then I would be thinking about, are things going to go right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess that's the reason I want to keep the same guys, because I want to have the security of knowing that even if I screw up, these guys are going to be on it,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
usually really are, and they
yeah,
can carry my sad ass if I screw up. And like I can make mistakes, I can do this, and they know for them it's comedy. Like they
yeah,
love it when I fuck up. Like the more I screw up, the more it is they get to go dope. and
yeah,
and
yeah,
it, one thing that I really suggest to people, like take mistakes as comedy, not seriously, because everybody makes them, and if you think they're funny, you'll be better off,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that won't darken your night. Because I know that enough people have experienced this, where you have a night that gets dark and you're so dark on yourself by the middle of the night that it's just a downward spiral. It's almost like a
yeah,
mental disease that
yeah,
enters your music. And when that mental disease enters your music, it spirals down. By the end of the gig, you're just a nervous wreck, and
Yeah.
you get off stage. And I've had it happen to me enough times where I know that if I keep things light and make fun of the things that I do wrong and think they're funny, then I don't get bummed out, and I'm ready to try again on the next song or the next few bars and try to make something cool happen, because I refuse to let myself go to that dark place
Oh yeah.
where
Oh yeah.
where that's every musician's. I Not just musicians, but can you imagine playing football or basketball in
Yeah.
front of literally hundreds of thousands of people, and or I don't know how big are stadiums. Maybe it's not hundreds of thousands. Maybe it's
Well,
tens
on
of
TV,
thousands.
millions. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're right. I forgot about the TV audience. It's millions. So yeah, and you're under such pressure. Like
Yeah, and
there,
you take that shot, a big shot, and miss it the first time, and you just shrink away from it for the rest of your career. Well, what would have happened
yeah,
if Jordan or Kobe did that? You know what I mean? Like, come on,
dude.
you know?
Did you see the Raiders game where the poor field goal guy missed 4 kicks in a row, and
Yeah,
then he won the game with the final kick? I was
yeah,
thanking the Lord that
yeah.
if there
And
is
that
one.
guy's
I'm
a
not
Hall
sure
of
there is
Famer.
one. I know,
Yeah,
but like to have 4 misses like that, easy
yeah,
misses, and then finally to get the opportunity to come back and win the game with a kick, I felt
yep,
so good for him, because be he was gonna walk away from that game the most miserable human being on the planet if he hadn't had a chance to redeem himself with
yep.
that kick.
You're
And
right. You're right.
that's how I feel sometimes on stage. It's like, well, maybe I screwed this up and screwed this up, but I kept a good attitude and I redeemed myself because I
Yeah.
played some good stuff. Whereas if
Well,
I
that's
didn't have that attitude, I would have just spiraled all down and the whole gig would have been a nightmare.
yeah,
So
but that's maturity too. I mean, you grew into that. You know. Yeah.
I guess, but Scott Kinsey said one thing. He said, attitude is the whole ball game.
Yeah.
It's not about the notes, it's about the attitude. Because I've
Yeah.
seen these guys like Steve Tavoloni play a C sharp on a C major 7 chord, and it sounds like gold because he knows how to sell it.
Yeah.
He has the experience, and he has the drive, and he has the knowledge and the phrasing knowledge to sell that note like it was the most golden note, even it's the most wrong note in the whole world. He knows
Yeah.
where to put it and how to sell it and how to be confident about it. It's his attitude that makes that note sound good.
Wow.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what it's about. It's about the
Yeah.
attitude. Where if you
Yep.
have the right attitude, you can get away with murder. And you can play
Yeah.
anything you want and make it sound good if your attitude is in the right place.
Yeah. You're right, man. 100%. Yeah. All right. Number 10, dude. So where do you want to be in 5 years? Do you just want to keep keeping on the same path, or is there another goal that you
No,
haven't
no.
reached somewhere you're going?
Well, I wonder about that myself, because I've done now, let's see, one, two, three, 4 guitar-based, non-keyboard-based albums.
Uh huh.
Because I've had this thing with keyboard players. My career started working with keyboard players.
Right.
And I've worked with keyboard players for my whole career. My track on an album has always been one track. It's the guitar. It's the guitar track. You
Yeah.
play the guitar track. Now I'm doing these records where I'm layering 100 guitars on top of each other and doing that thing. And
Right.
now People Mover is my 4th album. Guitar. Oh, well, actually, if you count Dog Party and Tore Down House, 1, 2, I guess all my, no, sorry, because Tore Down House had keyboards on it on a few things here and there. But I'd say Well to the Bone and Vibe Station and People Mover are like trio guitar records where the guitar is layered,
Uh huh.
inspired by people like Jimmy Page,
Uh
inspired
huh.
by people like Mike Landau, who's so good
Yeah.
at doing
Yeah.
it, doing those layered guitar records. I'm I don't know what to do next, if I should do another guitar layered record, or should I bring keyboards back into the mix, or maybe a horn player or something like that and change it up a little bit. I don't know. That's something that
Interesting.
I have to decide for myself, because financially I can't afford to take a 4th person on the road.
Right.
And it's got to be trio, or you don't make any money on the road. I mean, quartets, Jesus, the difference
Yep.
between taking a quartet on the road and a trio on the road is like astronomical when it comes to the money. you
it's
you bring
a
home
real
so
headache.
much more money when you're playing trio.
Yeah.
So I don't want to write music on a record that I can't reproduce. So probably more than likely what'll happen is I'll do another guitar trio record. But
Right.
that's the kind of stuff I think about is,
Mhm.
or I thought maybe, it would be really fun doing a duet album with Kinsey with no bass and drums.
So that would be cool,
Just,
and you could take
you know,
home even more money if you toured like
yeah,
that.
just tour me and Kinsey, the two Scotts, and
Yeah.
just have some, because I know we could make some amazing music together with all his sounds
Of
and
course.
all
Yeah.
my pedals and stuff. We could make some soundscape shit happen, and we could, make some swing happen and some funk. I'm sure it would be fun. So
Yeah.
I think about that kind of stuff, just little directional changes. That's one of the reasons I really respect John, McLaughlin, because he's done so many different styles of projects, from Mahavishnu Orchestra to the big band orchestra version to Shakti to all his different bands. And every time he does a project, it's a completely different thing. And and it's so cool,
And not only is it completely different, you still are 100% clear that's him, and it's his
yeah.
voice in
Well,
there, which is so amazing. Yeah.
he's a legend, man. He's one of my heroes for sure. If I had to think of a guitar hero, he would be the guy. Because I got to tell you a funny story. Um, he came to see me play in Nice, and we like to hang out.
Right.
And some guy comes up to me. I'm talking to John, just right off the stage, and some guy comes up and asks me for my autograph, and I was just like, dude, do you know who this is? I was pointing at John. I mean, do you know who this is? And the guy looked at John. He didn't know who it was. Yeah. And I'm going, like, I just can't somehow press the pen to the paper because I feel like such an idiot signing an autograph in front of John McLaughlin. And John said, just sign the fucking thing and let's go.
Well, it's funny, man. I've been in that. I've seen him around in those situations when it wasn't his gig, and he does kind of skate by without some people. It's like he looks like a handsome Formula One driver.
He does. He looks
retired,
like an actor or something, right?
Yeah.
He does, right? Yeah. But he's got that thing, man, and he's a funny guy. You think that he's going to be a real serious cat, but he was showing us a video of what they were watching on the road, and it was some ping pong with Bruce Lee playing ping pong. And I was going, let me show you what we've been watching on the road. It was a turtle fucking a shoe and making these weird noises. and I showed him the video and he said, oh shit, this is way better.
Oh God.
He's a cool guy, man. But I've always really respected his what he's brought to the music world because it's so innovative, and he came with a whole new thing that no one had ever done before. And a lot of guys have done that, and that's something that really kind of like blows me away when someone comes out with something that no one has ever done. And Mahavishnu Orchestra, when they came out, who had ever heard anything like that before?
No, it didn't exist. Yeah.
No, when I heard Birds of Fire for the first time, I just went, what the fuck? And I don't even know if I liked it. I thought it scared me, actually. But then it became one of my favorite records that I really like a lot.
Amazing. Wow. All right. So we made it to the end of the 10 questions. So members, if you haven't yet, hit join, become a member, because we're going to do a little turn 2 video where we teach you 2 licks. But, dude, it's just, I can't thank you enough for doing this, man.
Josh, it was a pleasure, man. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Dude. Hopefully when life gets back to normal, we can like actually hang and go to salsa and beer, man.
You know what? I had so much fun doing that gig with you and JT and Travis.
Yeah,
I'd love to do that again because that was a blast, man. I had so much fun.
Yeah, and we definitely have to do that again.
You know who blew me away? JT. Not that you didn't blow me away because you were playing your ass off as always, but JT, this is a guy who has played with Alan Holsworth, who has played the most difficult syncopated odd meter music, who can play the craziest shit in the world on the drums. And he sounded like a Motown drummer that night. He did not go into one bit of his jazz vocabulary. He sounded like he was the drummer at Muscle Shoals Studios, like somebody that can play blues and funk that authentically and just keep it so perfectly simple and feeling so great. That's a guy that he's a rare bird, man.
He is,
Because
man. I love JT. And every time I
JT's the
play with him,
best.
it's like again I'm reminded, wow, man, Joel's really special, man. What a fucking player. And
He
he's
is.
obviously such a
He
great guy
is.
too.
He's wonderful. And I played a gig right before the pandemic
Yeah.
with him and Darren Johnson.
Oh, I was
And
there. I was there.
oh yeah, you were there at that gig, and we had fun, and it was really fun to play JT, and that was more his element, fusion, and
Yeah.
where he
Yeah.
gets to play all his stuff, you know. But what a great drummer, man. But what impressed me that night was that he's able to just really go to a blues gig and play the blues, man. Not
Well, it was
like
funny. The
nah,
first time I called him for a gig, I didn't know, what would happen on the blues, and we were playing a slow blues, and he did just instinctually. I didn't call for them. He did some like stops and hits, kind of like in the way BB King does on the song "It's My Own Fault" on Live at the Regal. And I didn't ask for them or anything. He just kind of, and it made me realize, okay, he's listened. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, you know that he's steeped in that music as well as he is in jazz and fusion.
Yeah.
And I never knew that about Joel. I thought he was. I thought I'm going to go do a blues gig with Joel Taylor on drums, and it blew me away
Yeah.
that he just fit like a glove in that
Yeah.
music. I imagine that guy can play anything he wants to play.
Yeah.
He's so good. But I had a blast playing with you, man. You
Well,
were burning, and I was like looking over and going, "Oh shit."
oh man.
That was a
Well,
guitar lesson, man.
that's the way I always feel when I hear you play. But yeah, we'll do it again soon, and there will be links to all things Scott Henderson in the description of this video. But hang on, Scott, and we'll do the next little thing. But thank you everybody for watching.